Think about what you ate for dinner last night. Do you know how your food came to be? Sure, you bought it from the grocery store. You probably know that it was shipped in from a farm somewhere or from a different country, but that's the extent of it, right? In today's growing world, large-scale farmers are using non-sustainable techniques which harm the environment. Today, I'm going to not talk to you not only about the food that you're eating, but about the way that it is grown and the impact that it has on our environment. Sustainable agriculture is becoming more and more relevant with the increased popularity of organic foods. However, it's important to note that certified organic foods and sustainable farming are not the same thing. While it's true that both of these forms of farming focus on not using GMOs or antibiotics or pesticides or fertilizers, however, organic farming still exploits the soil and it's the minerals that are in it. And this makes it hard for plants to grow in the future and causes a dependency on fertilizers. Just because it's organic doesn't mean that it's good for the environment, says a researcher at the Permaculture Research Institute of New South Wales. There are many different kinds of farming systems all over the world, but for our purposes today, I'm going to speak to you about the two broader types in the US, sustainable farming and non-sustainable farming. Non-sustainable farming is really easy to make into a habit because it costs less time and money and care in the short run. However, sustainable farming is better in the long run, although it can take more time, money, and effort to establish. And the long run is what really matters because farming will never go away as long as humans are around to consume the products that the farm produces. So why do something poorly when we can make the outcome good for the consumer and for the planet? There's a lot of controversy in regard to this topic about which practices are the most economically stable or efficient. Non-sustainable farming may have a higher rate of outputs and have less costs. However, there are many shortcuts that are being taken to reach this end product, which I'll talk about later. Non-sustainable farming. Lots of pesticides and fertilizers are used to maximize yield. Runoff from the fertilizers has negative impacts on the surrounding environment when it reaches bodies of water, and it harms the organisms like the fish and all the plants that live there, as well as harming the animals that drink from there. Fertilizers also cause an imbalance in soil health because it strips the ground of its natural minerals over time and causes the dependency on fertilizer. Local sustainability practitioner Sierra Hecht adds that it always starts with the soil, agreeing that the chemicals that are being used in non-sustainable farming are doing the opposite of what's really wanted for the health of the earth. And these are shortcuts that are being taken with the fertilizers and pesticides, which in the long run are not efficient. The most prominent example of pesticides is in the bee community. Bees fly really far to collect nectar that is going to be used in honey, and in doing so, they also collect pollen on the outside of them, which they transfer from plant to plant and flower to flower, which helps these plants thrive and to grow. However, the spraying of pesticides in many commercial, park, and residential neighborhoods is harming the process of the honey and the combs and the whole hive system in general by tainting it with pesticides. From a test of honey and beeswax in the urban hives of central Kentucky from the Journal of Environmental Health says that the organochlorine pesticides such as DDT and endosulfan were present, both of which have persisted in the environment since being banned in 1972 and 2010. The study also found that 72% of honey samples tested in this study exhibited levels of pesticides exceeding the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency tolerable intake levels. Use of these pesticides has growing concern towards the potential human health effects and the negative impacts that it has on beehives. Bees support growth of all plants and the interconnected ecosystems that allow species to coexist. Bees are essential, and the use of pesticides is damaging the effectiveness of their role. Now, sustainability and sustainable farming have more variables in them. They're grown without the help of chemicals and fertilizers. In the short run, it is possible to lose parts of your crops to pests, and it does keep more work to keep these crops healthy. However, when done correctly, your farm will be a self-sustaining system that has no need for intervention, like using chemicals to get rid of pests. In the long run, the outcome of the crops is better for the consumer and for the soil and the surrounding environment because they'll not be laden with chemicals. Another part of agriculture is livestock. Raised in a sustainable way with a positive effect on the farm as a whole. That's a way that is possible for livestock to be a part of sustainable agriculture. Now, a really big part of the food sector is the meat sector, where in the meat sector, generally, the output rate is more important than the quality of the life that the animal lives and the quality of the product. The chicken industry is a really good example of how the meat industry is not doing its best job. So a really good article from the San Francisco Times shows both sides of the industry, the industrialized commercial chicken and the free-range sustainable chicken. Now, the industrial chicken, they are raised in large warehouses with no windows, and they're really close packed together. They get no exercise. They're in cages for their whole lives. And because of these cages, it's really easy for disease to spread. So because of this, to thwart this problem, what the farmers do is they quite often inject them with low doses of antibiotics. However, this only makes them artificially healthy. In addition, these chickens are fed with feed that is grown from pesticides and chemicals, which we already learned is not good for the earth, so it can't be good for you when you're eating it. And they also contain some amount of animal byproducts. But chickens are vegetarian, of course, except for the fact that they eat bugs. And so ingesting this feed is not good for them and has no value. And in the combination of having no exercise, this leads to a more fatty and a sicker bird overall. However, what this article focused on was the Petaluma Chicken Company and how they treat their chickens in a good way and how they are being sustainably raised. These free-range chickens are raised in ventilated houses, and they have access 24/7 to pesticide-free ground where they can roam about and exercise and eat insects. They are also fed organic vegetarian feed, which has the best nutrition and taste for these chickens. All these factors lead to a happier, healthier, and more naturally flavorful bird. And in addition, when these chickens are let roam about outside, they're able to eat as many bugs as they want, which can help thwart possible bug infestations, and their feces can also be used as a fertilizer on your farm. And this is all part of how it becomes its own self-sustaining system, because you don't need as much from the outside, because everything you need is produced on the inside. In conclusion, the climate policy continues to change, and more people are protesting for a healthier world. More farmers are starting sustainability from the beginning, and those that are already in the game are continuing to make changes. As the world population continues to grow, food grows in demand. We need to think of the most progressive and sustainable ways that farmers can help provide for and support the consumers. And we need to adopt the sustainable farming habits and techniques because they're better for the earth, the ecosystem, and for ourselves. The biggest way that you can help support sustainable agriculture is by going to your local farmers market and buying from small local farmers who generally don't use these type of bad things that are bad for the earth. And in addition, you can also grow your own garden in your backyard practicing these techniques. We need to ditch the non-sustainable farming for the planet's sake and for our own.